All right, good morning. Not quite as early as usual, but it's early to me. It's Sunday. It's another dead day. I have some floor people coming out to clean, and beyond that, we're just gonna knock it out and figure all this out together. So I was reading Plato's Republic this morning. I've been getting up. My new mode is to grab any book off my shelf and just sit from the library and just read, drink my coffee, and play music. And I was reading Plato's Republic. I'm glad I grabbed that one. And I was reading, it's interesting to me. This guy lived, 2,400 years ago? And I found myself rereading the paragraph where he asks Thrasymachus about wages, employment, basically the hierarchy conversation about, give me your opinion about what distinguishes those in charge from those who want wages, right? And it was really interesting. And he said to the guy, give me your answer. I want your answer. Otherwise, it's inauthentic. It means nothing. And I thought that was so poignant. And I'm like, wow, this is so long ago. Now, to be fair, they probably had, way less. They probably felt less unified than workers feel today because of the sheer lack of numbers. But maybe they didn't, right? Maybe they did not. Maybe they were like, wow, okay. This guy's my boss, this is my job, this is my lot, what do I do? And a large touching stone for that book, for Republic, is it's really think for yourself, right? And a lot of philosophers who did that were either, exalted or executed. But his point was, what is your true answer? Dig inside of your own mind and give me an answer. And that's been kind of like the crux of mankind, hasn't it? Like, what do you think? Who cares about what your influencers, whoever they were back then, say? Who cares about this or that, right? Just what do you think? And that begs a question I have always had where I say, who influenced Dostoevsky? Who influenced Plato? Who influenced all the greats? Marcus Aurelius, all the way down to the first writings, right? Like, was it scripture? Was it just oral tradition that somehow transformed into figuring out how to take your emotions and put them on a page with an inkwell? Interesting. I found before I go on, but what a bunch of badasses the original philosophers were. Spinoza, right? These people thought, and they really, they do what I try to do when I write. I feel, I think, I write, right? And that is so cool. But back then, they had really nothing to go on. The moon, the stars, their love, their hatred, their observations. It was a purely beautiful process. And that's kind of where I think that we've gotten lost, right? But I found this really, one of my friends gave me this beautiful quill, this pen, and all these pen tips. And I have to get a new ink jar. One of my friends broke it on accident. Like around 2016, he broke it and spilled over a sock. He was bummed, and I was bummed. But ink is no problem. But I remember thinking I should write a whole book with a dab, 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 blah, 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 dab, dab, dab. Dearest Wellington. But the idea, though, is when I was reading Plato, the entirety, the beauty of that text, translated as it is, the translator nailed it. But it was just the sheer magnitude, the wealth of knowledge this man had. And to really talk about politics and power and, existential topic, right? Back then, that kind of topical, not even topical, it was life or death. And the way he came out and just nailed it, right? Beautiful mind. His mind was a beautiful place, is a beautiful place. As long as this earth has paper and books, he will always live. And that's one of the coolest parts about art. It's unintentional, obviously. It's really not in someone's forefront when they create, but you create something and it's out there. It will stay out there until there's no more anything, unless it's just bacteria surviving. You're going to have your body of work out there or whatever you put out there. It's pretty cool. And like all good writing and reading and forms of art, whether it's a song that takes you back or gives you hope, whether it's a soundtrack to a movie that you like, or whether it's your own soundtrack to your own rock video of yourself in your own mind, which is the best kind of music out there when you make your own videos. Reading Plato's Republic this morning really brought me back to being a teenager and reading and kind of like I discovered philosophy early, but I was reading, I fell in love first with Nietzsche. He was, like a lot of young men, I found Friedrich Nietzsche, and when you when you really get into Nietzsche, you're like, huh, you really, I mean, you kind of, in a weird way too, I felt sympathetic toward Nietzsche. Even as a teenager, I was like, wow, I kind of feel bad for the guy. And then you read Schopenhauer, and you're like, okay, this is like Nietzsche on steroids. And then you realize Schopenhauer did most of his work by the time he was like 27. What the fuck, right? I couldn't even form a thought until I was like 50. No, just kidding, but you know what I mean. It's impressive. I mean, obviously back then you had to grow up faster because, TikTok. And since Plato revved up my engine this morning with my coffee, I thought I'd read from Time and Skin, where I was, the character, quote unquote, I was coming into a weird age where he had just lost another job due to at-work politics, not really even at work. A Greek girl came into play. Speaking of Athenians, interesting. I didn't even put that together. Your subconscious is so powerful, right? What brought this upcoming read on was there was a part of the book where the character had sex with a young Greek girl in his van, and his foreman's wife had relatives in town. They invited him over for dinner, and they had sex in the van. They were drunk, young kids having fun, and the wife's sister freaked out. Well, of course she did. Some American was fucking her daughter in a van, or she was fucking him. Really, that's what happened. She walked out and she fucked him, but I'm not going to read that part. It's too steamy. I'm not in that kind of a mood to read steam. But I want to read after Alexandra and all that stuff. But it really caused a ruckus in the guy's life, Marty, his boss, and then he didn't get fired because of that. But that definitely weakened the relationship because of what Marty had to deal with. Then Marty's brother came back in town and asked for his job back, and that happened to me once on a real job. And and that moment carried over into a couple of stories and books I've written. So anyway, in that regard, that part of the book was definitely fiction, but que sera, sera. So I thought I'd read that part of the book here. Let me pull it up. Go to a nice big screen so I can see my copy, because I'm getting old. I really need to be wearing readers, but I'm going to start here where the van comes in play. So, okay, here we go. This is very early in the book, so it's like page 35. That includes the intro pages, and so much happens so fast in this book. I got lucky, I guess. It doesn't seem like the transitions are too fast. I don't think. Okay, here we go. Monday morning, I was leaving for work when the van started, let out this huge explosion, then seized. It wouldn't even kick over. My brother was in the kitchen. I walked in and called Marty's car phone. My brother raised his coffee cup to me. "You threw a rod." "Perfect," Marty answered. I told him I threw a rod. "Shit, I really need you today." I told him I'd get there somehow. My brother couldn't give me a lift because he was already late himself. The bus system in Phoenix was practically non-existent. I took my bike in from the back porch and strapped my tool belt around the bars. My brother laughed. "You're riding all the way to Sun City?" "Yes." I was coasting up the sidewalk when my brother pulled up next to me in his Bronco. "Oh, hey dude, I almost forgot. Happy birthday." He peeled out around the corner. I was 20 years old. Sun City is where all the old people live. Golf carts everywhere. It's a big retirement community. No one under 55 can live there. We were only there for another month when we had a project in Deer Valley, just minutes from where my brother lived, so I could technically walk to work every morning. Marty couldn't give me a ride into Sun City because it was simply too far out of the way for him. I rode to and from work for 2 weeks when Marty was fired after a fight with the superintendent over some confusion with the building codes, and it put a 2-week gap before the next place. The Deer Valley project was a long one, like a 1.5-year contract. He told me he'd see me in 2 weeks. I was still a few $100s up after rent, but now I had no wheels. A junk dealer came out and towed the van. I signed the title over and he gave me a 50. Depression set in. I wanted my own place. I was tired of living with people. I kept in touch with my sister from Illinois. Many letters were written and many calls were made. I borrowed my brother's Bronco one day and drove to the bookstore, bought some poetry and ordered a few scarce books. I laid around for a week and read, or I sat in the park and I read some thick Nietzsche. He was good for depression. I wasn't a teenager anymore and I wasn't an adult. I was in limbo. I went back to the journals again and updated everything. I wanted to look back on them when I was an old man, read them, relive my life when I could no longer live. One day I sat in the park and read, and I stopped and thought about Alexandra, about how perfect she was. I didn't miss her or anything. I imagined hunting her down in Greece, her surprise at seeing me again. I imagined more sex with her, and that was all. I imagined being with her would be like any other relationship after a while. I missed my van more than I missed anyone. It occurred to me that a lot of the attraction for Alexandra came with the fact that we didn't speak each other's language. The whole thing was so damned perfect, despite the way it had ended, and the fight with her mother almost made it better than perfect. I was in a void, back in Phoenix with no way out. I didn't have any friends, anywhere to really go. My brother always called me a loner. I never thought about it, yet I always felt better when I was alone. Nothing really phases a man who likes to be alone. I imagine the strongest and most interesting people were loners. There is a line between a loner and a sociopath, a line similar to the insane and the unsane, a line between the dead and the ignorant. I thought that if a man was an insane loner, neither ignorant or dead, then he was all right, though I hadn't seen such a man. I gave up my thoughts, put on my headphones, and blasted Sabbath. You know, it's interesting reading that paragraph. When I wrote, I remember back then when I wrote this book, I was 29 years old. I wrote this book, and I remember that paragraph, you can't live there unless you're 55 or older. Back then, 55 sounded like you're like 1 foot in the grave, like you're so old, and here I am, 55. And you know what? It's no big fucking deal. Oh, by the way, I'm on the MKH-416 today, the shotgun. I'm on the Apollo Twin X interface, the first generation, and I'm not really using much of anything. C-Box for noise and a little bit of de-essing built into the DSP, and it's pretty cool. I kind of like this. I'm really, the more I use this mic, the more I wonder why I ever used anything else. I'll get another 87 AI one day, but I just think the 416 is just, it's my microphone. But I'm going to keep going a little bit and maybe stop and walkie-talkie through all this. This is where Chapter 4 starts. I rode to the site Monday morning. I saw the truck. I threw my bike in the back and strapped on my belt. Marty was walking from the trailer with an older guy. He said something to him, and the guy split sideways around a pile of lumber. Marty told me it was his brother who had fallen back on rough times. He had my job. I rode back. I didn't feel like hanging around the house. I rode up 35th Avenue toward Bell Road since I had resolved to get back into my riding. I found a large parking lot of a wholesale warehouse. I worked on some new tricks for a few hours and rode to a hot food stand in front of the big doors and ordered a hot dog and a Coke. I saw a short guy walk out and rip open a candy bar. I was back in the 3rd grade. We had a big house across from Acoma Park. I was on the soccer team. My teacher was Miss Bayard. She was the only teacher who had given me a left-handed ledger. I ran with one kid in the 3rd grade, Jack Robles. I remember his parents constantly at work and us at their house eating and watching television. He had a sister in the 7th grade, and I liked to watch her walk around her house barefoot in short t-shirts. I remember her getting fat that year, and my brother, not quite the cowboy then, and his goofy friends remarking about what a shame it was. A fine piece of ass like that going to waste. His family was from Harrisburg, and they carried these funny accents. I remember Robles coming to class with a Dorothy Hamill haircut, one of the styles of the time. He was way too proud of it. Soon every other boy in class had the same haircut. My father was dime store at heart, and my hair was kept a bit longer than the other boys. Except back then nobody cared much how you looked. What mattered was your position at recess, what you did. The toughs played football or fast, mean games of tetherball. The sissies played 2-square or 4-square with the girls. The soccer players were left to themselves. Somehow we had slipped the order. There weren't any bullies at that school. I only had one fight the entire year, and that happened in the park with the 4th grader, a kid who tried to steal Robles, shin guards, and ball. A circle was formed around us, and the next thing I knew, my father and my brother were in the park in their socks, my father telling me to kick his ass. The kid grabbed me in a headlock and cut off my air. I dug an elbow into him, and when he let go, I jumped on him and swung wildly. He covered his head, so I hit him about the arms and stomach. I remember cursing at him. Then I stopped, jumped off, and ran home. Neither of us really won. In the house, my father called everyone he knew to tell them I had won my first fight. The next day in the park, the kid was kicking the ball with us. That's how it was. A mistake was corrected and forgotten. When my father saw us, he called me to our driveway and told me if I didn't hit the kid square in the mouth, then I was grounded. I couldn't do it. He hustled me inside and sent me upstairs to my room. My mother heard about it, and they fought. She lifted the punishment, which had become a regular job for her. Robles and I were a lot alike, except he was short. I remember one day my sister brought home a family of rabbits. I never asked where they came from. My brother and the old man built cages for them in the backyard, and I grew to love the rabbits. Often I would take them to Jack's house and we would play with them. Then when springtime was ending and the heat came, the rabbits got sick. One afternoon, the Goodyear Blimp flew close over our house and they were dead. My father told me that the heat, combined with the noise of the blimp, took them out. My mother went out and bought me a hamster to cheer me up. I had this huge cage in my room with the big running wheel and the plastic see-through tunnels. Robles would come over and we would watch him run until our eyes blurred. Summer came and ended school. One morning the hamster wouldn't move. I called Robles. He said he could save it. I ran it over in a paper bag and he took a straw and blew into the hamster's whiskers. Then the hamster was stiff. We buried him in the backyard and forgot about it. We were usually moving. Back to Peoria, back to Phoenix. Once we even lived in the Texas Panhandle, first in a small town, then on a farm about 10 miles from it, and it was pure hell. But that year we moved 5 miles away, which meant a new school, different faces. Robles and I still hung out every now and then. By the time I was in 7th grade, we had lost touch completely. In front of the warehouse, I watched him eat his candy bar. He was working there, wearing the uniform. He hadn't changed much since the 3rd grade. A little stockier, a little less hair. I walked up and stuck my finger in his back. "Robles, you owe me a hamster, you piece of shit." He turned around. After a couple of holy shits were exchanged, we hung out and ate lunch. He still lived at home. I told him I still remembered the phone number. Okay, I'll stop there. I think what I should point out is after I got back from the Panhandle with my family, oddly enough, I live in the Texas Panhandle right now. But so many parallels. I wonder if we predetermine our own lives, if we manifest our own destinies. Well, anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So back after I moved back from Texas, we got a house a little bit like 4 miles away from the old neighborhood, and Sean Robles, my buddy, would come over and we'd hang out for until probably high school. When he went his own way. He went to a different high school than I did, and we kind of lost touch at that point. Not so much, but just over the attrition of distance and lack of transportation. Right, we would pedal our bikes back and forth to each other's house. It wasn't that far, looking back on it, right? But when you were that young, it's like I'm pedaling through Narnia or something. Anyway, so I don't have a whole lot to say anymore. I really had a lot of fun recording this morning. I hope that translates to you when you hear this, but things to do today, a lot of cleaning, a lot of prep, a lot of mental prep, too, for what's ahead next week. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll talk to you in the brand new video, and as always, you take good care.